places other than just the market. It's probably less clear during the week when they might already be, downtown anyway, working in many cases, but are taking advantage of the validated parking and by default then also buying something at the market, which is great. So we are seeing the trend move upward each month as the data rolls in and as the customer base gets more and more aware of the opportunity. So we're at a point where we have a number of options that we've been discussing with ECDEV, with the parking authority, with the stall holders, et cetera, but we have not been able to really conclude at this point in time the total value, nor to explore fully all of the options that are available to us for a sustainable model on the parking. The one thing we're pretty clear on in our minds at least is that it is adding enough value that we do want to keep it going until at least the balance of the year, and we would suspect indefinitely. Other markets, London, et cetera, they do have a validated parking offer which they feel strongly about does bring people in at least for a small purchase, if not their major purchase. So we're recommending the pilot be extended to the balance of this year 2014. In the latter part of this year, post-election and appointment of committees, et cetera, we would bring a report back to the subcommittee and then on through to council recommending a final sustainable model with regards to the parking. So the challenge, of course, has been up until now with the funding. As you know, we did use a piece of funding from our marketing budget to get us this far. And in order to fund the balance of the year, we've gone through and done a line-by-line review of our budgets. We've looked at some of the categories where we might be a little bit underspent. We've looked at categories where we might see some potential savings by not doing certain things or at least deferring them into the future. And at the same time, we've got some additional revenue streams starting to now flow in through new vendors moving in. Donna Lee and one of my colleagues who handles the revenue generation piece now, Brian McDonald, met this morning with the president of the Ontario Wine Commission to kind of firm up that detail and arrangement. So again, behind that, we see some interesting sponsorship opportunities as well. So it's a mix of primarily focusing in on kind of the bird in the hand, which is our cost control, but also the bonus may turn out to be, if you will, that there are some additional revenue opportunities as well that will offset it. But all that being said, we have full confidence that we can put together the budget for the balance of the year to handle the parking, which we're estimating to be up to $40,000 based on current trending. Just to move forward with more updates, I mentioned new vendors moving in. So on April the 15th, we opened up Shane Coleman's new business called Dilly's Pharmacy. I thought at first it was a spelling mistake, but no, I'm just kidding. June the 15th, we have the Dutch House Market folks moving in. And I guarantee you, if you keep shopping at the market once they move in, you will gain at least 30 to 50 pounds before the end of the year. They brought in incredible samples of their new products. And for those of you who, like me, enjoy pie, 2 pounds of fresh fruit filling in every pie. We also have opening up July the 1st, we've got a new vendor coming in who focuses in on specialty gourmet vegetarian foods. A lot of them including Asian foods prepared in the market and foods to take home. Extremely fortunate that we have a husband and wife team call themselves Zest Foods, who are both Red Seal chefs, and in the world of chefs, that's the kind of the gold seal of approval and certification. And again, we enjoyed lots of incredible samples from them. And they're going to be setting up approximately August the 1st, gourmet soup, sandwiches, etc. So a lot of it prepared that you can eat in the market, and then also they'll be doing a lot of the foods that you can take home. And as I mentioned previously, we've been working hard on the VQA piece, and as I mentioned also, Donna Lee met this morning with the president of the Ontario Wine Commission, and we're working towards an approximately, the 1st of August kind of date. We are just to accommodate this, of course, we're looking at what would be the ideal space and want to use it as a way of drawing people into the market. So we're literally looking at converting what is today Donna Lee's office space. If you recall, as you walk down it's the glassed-in area. We're looking potentially to remove the glass, make that retail rentable space, and it draws well, just a little bit offset from Sam's Meat and Cheese, et cetera. So we think that might be a good location. More work to do in that regard, but we're very excited about bringing that in. It lends itself to many opportunities, and we think it will increase the demand from both local farmers and other vendors who potentially would join us in the market going forward as we have other openings. Just a quick recap of our event-oriented approach to this from a marketing point of view. Going back to March the 1st when we launched the parking pilot, the 7th we launched our Twitter account. I'll show you the stats in a second. We had a great program throughout March break. On the 25th, we launched our weekly specials where there are 6 or so vendors each week offering up specials. The 28th of March was our first pop-up restaurant. The photos that you see are from that first restaurant event, and we have another one this Friday the 13th, an ominous date for sure. We expect all of the folks to come from Port Dover into the pop-up market right after. It's going to be a very exciting one. This time we have 4 local executive chefs. 7 of our vendors are providing all the food. We have also a local winery is providing the wine. So it's sold out and should be a great evening. Again, on an event-driven basis, we've tried to do a lot of things that are themed around bringing numbers of people in. So Easter was a big one for us. We actually had a petting zoo on York Street, which was incredibly popular. And in drawing people in, Alipa, who's not here right now, Alipa Patel has been very helpful in working with Donna Lee and Sapphire to create calls to action to bring families in. So for example, the coloring contest was something that appeared in the spec. Color it at home and come on in and enter the contest kind of thing. So we've done a few of those. We had on May the 10th, we celebrated Emergency Preparedness Week by having folks come in and again, used different techniques to have kids get involved in coloring, etc., to then come in, bring in their coloring example for potential prizes, and also they, of course, can do it on the spot in the market. We've also had, 1, 2, 3 days in which the public art models, and that's not the right term. What's the term for that, Donnelly? Beckett. So the Becketts are the models of the 6 finalists, and they were on display in the York Street public space area. People could come in and vote, could check them out, and the response certainly that we got from the culture group was that it was a disproportionately active level of involvement and voting on these pieces of art. I understand that the selection has been made. We don't know the winner yet, but we're anxious to hear which of those final pieces will over time be fabricated and will adorn the front of the marketplace. Of course, Mother's Day, a great opportunity to celebrate and display flowers. And there's the big photo op there for our chair at the 55th anniversary celebration. I think you would agree, Councillor Farr, it was a pretty busy day at the market, great vibe. Facebook, we're actually news stats, we're over 1,000 now already. And I'll tell you a little bit more about what's behind it. So as opposed to rushing in on a website, we wanted to do as much as we could with Facebook. So again, through Donna Lee, Alipa and her team, including Andy Zimmerman, have created vendor profiles with many, many photo images and biography for each of the vendors. All of the historical photos are also filed, and it's interesting, on Twitter, for example, it's the, I'll call them the antique or vintage photographs are the ones that get the most attention and the most retweets. So all of that has been done, put online. They created an album for Sam's Cheese and Meats. I think there was 500 images in it, some crazy number. So if you missed that one, you had to wait for quite a while to see it come up again. But they've really done a great job of taking all of these materials, and now they're all filed in-house on the N drive for quick access and resourcing for any kind of promotions that we are going to do on a per vendor basis or for the market overall. As I mentioned, Twitter's been just a dynamic tool for us. As of the other day, we had 1,182 followers, and many of our followers have large networks, so when we get retweets, they're retweeting in very large numbers. We also created an updated vendor map and did it in a style that in the short term allows us to change it easily and inexpensively as we continue to move and shuffle some folks around. Once we settle in a bit more, we'll turn these into very large, easy to read, just like you would see in a mall, the big directory. It's also, of course, on our website and through Facebook. One of the things that ILIPA has done extremely well for us, and these are all either no-cost or low-cost kind of items. If you see the top left picture, we now are a regular feature on City Hall's digital sign out front that tells when we're open. You'll see in the bottom left an example where we are on a regular display on the Global Spectrum digital screens on York and Bay, the one over here, and of course the one on the side of the building on King Street as well. Because of ILIPA's background in relationships, she's been able to get a lot of community profile information, such as the article here. And overall, I think we're getting a large number of activities coming out of our community partnerships. For example, we continue to contest in cooperation with Global Spectrum. So if it's a child-friendly program, they'll provide tickets, we'll offer up a coloring contest, whatever it is, to draw families in, and it's worked out very well between the two of us. So a quick look at other action register items. The outdoor sign, we lost a bit of time investigating how to get power to that because we wanted to start with an illuminated sign. Quite frankly, ripping up the sidewalk and all sorts of contortions for solar power, battery, etc. We're adding more and more time, expense, and an unacceptable level of delay. So we said, let's just move ahead with the sign as designed, non-illuminated for now. We'll get it in, and we started to think about the rationale behind would that work or not. Well, if you think about the hours that the market is open, is only going to be a short period of time in the winter when it actually would be potentially dark going by. So we have that time between now and then to figure out an arrangement for, the solar doesn't work so well for us because of location, but either potentially battery or even just spotlights on the sign for that short period of time. So we're now looking at the sort of end of August, end of July, early August for that to be installed. On the cellular side, as you know, we did complete the Bell and Telus work back actually in late January. Rogers have eventually come back to us. I'm not totally clear on what their technology gaps are there, but their sort of initial rough quote is about $50,000, and so we're more inclined to encourage our stall holders to switch over to Bell or Telus than if they need that for their payment machines, or they can use the Wi-Fi that's been installed. So it's not a major issue. It's probably a bit of an irritant to those who thought they were loyal Rogers customers, but I just can't justify at this point in time looking for $50,000 to improve the Rogers service. So we're going to meet with them. I'm not sure that it's out of the question that they might compromise a bit. Certainly the big city contract is coming up for renewal at some point in the near future. That might be of interest to them as well. So we'll keep plugging away at that one. The ventilation for cooking is a really interesting one, and as we've chatted in this meeting, and John and I were chatting earlier, the big thing missing from the market when you enter is that great smell of foods cooking, and you start to get hungry as soon as you walk in. So we knew, I'll say through rumor, that it was a big project, but we got engineering involved and architects, and for a very small amount of money, we got a pretty detailed couple of options broken down. So I won't get into too much detail. Number one, yes, it is expensive, but you could potentially do it in a modular fashion. So the thing I would say is that for 2015 budget consideration, we will come forward with a report of some sort. We don't know what that looks like just yet, because the other thing that we're trying to do, and I think it's my last item here, is we're at a point now where I think we've wrestled a lot of the issues, the short-term issues, to the ground. There's always lots of room for improvement, of course, but it gives us an opportunity to pause over the summer and say, well, what do we want the sort of the master floor plan or layout to look like for the market? How many flower shops should we have? Where should they be located? This sort of thing, and try to create a long-term plan. Not that we would look in any way, shape, or form to create any upheaval by just shuffling the deck, but by having a master plan, it helps us then to move slowly and with full respect to our existing vendors towards a master plan. So we'll determine in that master plan, do we really need 2 people to be able to cook with full grease-laden equipment? Do we need 3, 4, 5, etc.? So we'll determine that, and from the master plan, we'll then be able to determine what it is we want to come forward as far as a recommendation for any ventilation changes. In the meantime, there are some alternatives. So think of ventilation as the extreme. So if you're going to have grease-laden foods, lots of fried things, you definitely need fully vented outdoor systems. However, if you're baking and a number of other things, you can use self-vented ovens. So we're working with a few of our stall holders who are interested in that to see what would be involved from their expense and potentially from ours to provide them with additional power. We're also, point number 4, one of the things that's always been a bit controversial in the market, from the market's point of view or the stall holder's point of view, is the space that is currently occupied by the community kitchen. The broader framework, though, is that the community kitchen is one of the reasons why we want to have a not-for-profit corporation versus privatizing, because we want to be able to not only run the market in a business-like manner, but we also want to live to our social and community responsibilities regarding food security, education, etc. So we've been in some very early discussions with Emergency and Community Services to talk about their potential role and involvement in taking that facility over. That would allow them to more fully focus on developing I'll say a more full-time schedule within their department and their operating budget. At the same time, it would remove that activity from us from a workload point of view, and also would clean up the lines quite a bit and save us some money within the market budget by reducing those expenses that we currently pay. Today, as an example, combination of all activities, salaries, benefits, the cost of providing food, the various presentations, is about $80,000 in our budget. So that would be something we're looking at over the next couple of months to see what is of interest to the rest of the corporation. The health department obviously is very actively involved in those discussions as well because of the food security issues. And as I mentioned last point, the master planning session we'll be having with the association representatives and staff in July and August. A lot of homework we need to do on that to see what other markets are doing. I have no doubt there's great research that's available that can tell us of the ideal traffic patterns, mix of vendors, all that sort of thing. So, and I'll pause there and ask if there are any questions.
Committee, any questions for our presenter? Councillor Pasuda.
Thank you, Chairman Farr, and thank you, John, so far for the update on this. Vendors, stall holders.
Yes.
How many open stalls is there still within the market?
With the people coming in, we have one who's just left Candy Works. She got another arrangement, another facility it's just better for her personally in her business. So we have a small vacancy there. We do expect coming up a little bit of turnover in one or two stalls as people are considering retirement, various things. But other than that, we will be full. And in fact, we're creating the additional space by converting the office into vendor space. So we don't have any additional, I'll say, empty spaces that we're worried about at this point in time. The other part, though, that I know we've talked about briefly in here is the opportunity to create additional rental spaces. We'll look at that, number one, from the master plan. We'll look at that for the York Street space, because I think that's the really interesting opportunity to do some different things than what we're doing today. The idea that if you put something unique in there, whether it's a series of, cafe-type businesses, that because that space can be partitioned off, it does have washrooms, a sink, et cetera. We may have to do some additional plumbing and electrical up there to provide the right facilities. But then you could operate, theoretically, that portion of the market in off hours and off days from the market. So create a more, I'll say, permanent or sustainable top of mind awareness of the market that at a very minimum, you'd be able to go there almost any day of the week and stop in for a coffee, that kind of stuff. So we're looking at that as additional space. But as far as other vacancies, there's really nothing that will be left open in the next little while.
Mr. Chairman, if I may continue. So, John, the open space that's been used for, the emergency preparedness had the event down there, the pop-up restaurants?
Yes.
So the pop-up restaurant, is that, you've had one so far? You got the second one coming up on
That's correct.
Friday, tomorrow. Is that going to be continuing, or is that just kind of a...
Totally at our discretion and the discretion of the organizer, Dave Hanley from Pop-Up Hamilton. He loves the idea because it fits so well with what he's doing philosophically, so he's got the great source of food right there. It's for us, selfishly, it's the cheapest, highest value marketing we could get. I mean, all we're really doing, quite honestly, is providing the space. He does everything else. And so it's a great spotlight for us on the market. If I'll rephrase it, until we have that space more permanently occupied by vendors of some description, we would welcome more of those kind of event-type opportunities there.
Chair, so with the winery coming into the market, BQA, do you think, I've got to be careful how I phrase this, open public spaces there now, you wouldn't be considering that for a winery if there's one winery market where you said we're done to lease spaces?
Yes, and through you, Chair, the reason for that is that it's really twofold. One is that if it were out just on York Street area in that space, it becomes more or less a standalone business that has nothing to do with the market, and it kind of replaces the LCBO, right? And we don't think that's good for drawing the right clientele, all those sorts of things. We really want to use it in the same way that we would for any of the other vendors that I mentioned coming into the market as a reason to come to the market and get down inside to shop. And, hopefully while you're there considering buying a bottle or two of wine, you're also looking across and thinking of how you're going to pair that wine with the cheese, et cetera, that's across the aisle, those sorts of things.
So through Mr. Chair to John, and so the winery itself, will it be a specific winery or would it be a combination of different VQA?
Yeah, that's through the Chair, that's the interesting thing we're working through now. So under the guidelines that are currently approved, you can have a single winery in a single location for no more than 3 days that week. So we're open 4 days, right? You cannot at this point in time, because of the election being called, the legislation that was on the table to allow us to potentially have a boutique that will be delayed indefinitely. So what we're focused on is working with the Wine Association to see what model might work, where literally you could have more than one winery sharing a week. So maybe it's 2 days and 2 days, so that you've always got wine available for sale. Like we ask our other vendors to be there 4 days a week, we would want these to be open. We also think that it could be a rotational basis, because there's a great opportunity with the huge number of Hamilton and Niagara wineries around us to rotate them through on a schedule. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but it really to some degree depends on what works for them as a business model. Whether that's a 3-week rotation or 3 months, don't know for sure. But we would like to see this as an opportunity to really showcase different wineries in a mix that's turning over.
Okay, and maybe one more question, and have Councillor Collins will take the floor here for questions. So the ventilation, and I'm getting requests about ventilation, what can be done, and when's it going to happen, if it's going to. You've got in here for 2015 capital budget be considered. So potentially, if something was to go through for the budget and allow for some monies to go into the ventilation project, would that be something to be, do you think would be ready for 2015 fall, or would that be a 2016 project?
We would hope that if we had, I'll say, reason to be optimistic that we were going to get the funding, we would want to get all of our ducks lined up and have that operational in the fall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, John.
Councillor Collins?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and through you, along the same lines, the question I had is, most people, when the market opened, were just shocked to learn that we didn't have that setup already in place. And so excuse me, the question I would have through you, John, would be the cost of the capital upgrades. Sorry, I think you said you had engineering work done, and I'm not certain I caught the number in terms of what the capital request would be, or what the ballpark suggestion would be.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just dig out, I thought I brought my notes. I can tell you sort of the combination. So what they concluded was that the two most efficient areas to consider, one would be that York Street space, and the other would be where today Jepson's meets Voss Eggs up on that on the back as you're coming in from Jackson Square. That through design they offer the fastest route, if you will, out. So they designed a cluster situation for up to 5 vendors to be fully vented. And a few different combinations that we walk through, so there is some flexibility. Let me just get to the cost sheet here. So as an example, the commercial exhaust hoods are $20,000 each, ballpark. So that's where I think the variability is. So even though here it says $100,000, if we determined that the right thing to do was to put the, I would say all of the, maybe the duct work in the area that would eventually serve 5, but we might choose in, say, year 1 to go with 2, as an example. And other costs are variable directly related to that. So for example, the quote here is for 5 fire suppression systems at $5,000 each. 5 centrifugal exhaust fans at $7,000 each. Some of the other infrastructure would not be variable. You'd want to do all the ductwork, that sort of thing. So at the very, very high end, if you did everything here, it is including a 10% construction contingency, it's just a little over $300,000. And then there's some other fees, design, et cetera, that add another amount. So the total of doing this, according to this estimate, is $357,000.
And is it as simple as just splitting that figure in 2 to determine if you were to take the York location? Is it as simple as just saying, well, now it's $175 per site?
It's it's a combination of fixed and variable. So for example, that total number assumes 5 of everything. So you could, let's say, just as an example, you chose to do only 2 for this budget year. So you do, so that'd be $40,000 in exhaust hoods, there would be $10,000 in suppression systems, $14,000 in fans, et cetera. Some of the other things, though, like the duct work And I think a few of these others, which quite honestly I don't understand very well, but make-up air unit, make-up ductwork, et cetera, and associated electrical, those are more or less fixed in here. So once we determine what would be the kind of ideal and then see what phasing might make sense, we could see this, I would guess, at, I mean, you could easily, if you're going to go with 2, you could easily take out of that bill, what's that, say 60, you know, you could take out 80,000 at least out of this quote, at least. So I suspect that, you know, somewhere more realistically around the $200,000, you know, give or take, would be a more realistic figure of what we could do as a first phase without losing the, I'll say, the infrastructure opportunity for adding more.
Okay, that gives me a good understanding of what we're looking at. In terms of the winery revenues, again, I'm not certain that you talked about the program and what would be offered in the timelines as of August 1st. I think you referenced it as one of the sort of shots in the arm that we needed to help us with the parking program. Right. That's one part of it.
Right.
Do we know what we're looking at in terms of new revenue sources?
Not entirely. We've done some scouting around to see what grocery stores, for example, were charging the wineries who set up boutiques there. So we know those revenues. I think a lot of it will, and the difference, of course, is that they tended to be a permanent establishment for that winery. And I think in some cases they did have a boutique. So I think the business case is different here from the winery's perspective. We think it's a premium rental space for sure because of the nature of their product. We also know that there's good revenue opportunities for us behind that in terms of sponsorships and other promotional campaigns. So we'll do probably a combination of things. One would be to establish a rental rate that is premium but works for them. We'll establish
What's our highest rate now, John?
A typical stall would be $900 to $1,000 a month. And I believe, Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, it's $27 per square foot, all in?
There, so it's $25 or $27 per square foot annualized.
Right.
27 is the high end.
That's the premium space we have today, yeah. Okay. So we would, it'd certainly be at that premium level or potentially higher.
Okay. Parking, so we've piecemealed revenue sources together.
Yes.
Going into 215, we will have something in farmers market budget that accommodates the continued free parking, obviously based on council's endorsement and support.
Yes.
Or will we need or require new revenues in addition to some of the funding sources that you identified during your presentation?
Our goal, our target, is to not require additional funding, to find a combination of funding sources, including, again, potential sponsorships, you know, various things that would allow us to continue with validated parking on a sustainable basis without negatively impacting the budget.
Last question would be call it the morale with the stall holders. How are we faring? Because I know you've had a very aggressive, you and by extension the staff at the market have had a very aggressive outreach and communication campaign with the stall holders to try to build some bridges with maybe some who had different opinions than held in the past. And I know that you have tried as best to communicate most of what you've presented here today to the vendors, and I believe you're actually soliciting some support or some participation from the general public as well. How's that faring with those two crowds?
Good. I think we're making progress. I mean, I would never pretend that we've, you know, reached the end of our journey here at all. And it is an ongoing challenge. So it's, I'd say the most direct way to say it is that our success is measured by the cash in their till, right? And for example, you know, parking, great, events, great, but unless it translates into their till, it's not so great after it's all over. A number of people, including some patrons, have described it recently is that, you know, if you think of it as a trough, so things were kind of going downhill, there was a fair amount of dissatisfaction. We've had them very much engaged, involved. We still meet on a regular basis with the Stallholder Association. And it's been described to me that, you know, we started to make the turn coming up. I don't think if I were to put it in, you know, pure business terms, I think we are 30 to 40% of the way back up the hill that we want to go. So there's a lot of work still to do. And a lot of the things now that are in front of us tend to be the heavy lifting capital kind of items, because you can do tons of marketing, you can do this and that, but if you still can't cook, you know, if you still can't do this, can't do that, it is a limit. One of the things that Donna Lee, I give her so much credit for this, that has come up with is physically, a lot of the complaints were that the market felt very closed in, you know, as you're walking through. And so we started experimenting with a few stalls, including the one that Shane Coleman now occupies, where we took out the glass, the heavy frosted glass wall that was partitioning it off and rest. All of a sudden, it opens up, you know, like this feeling of natural light. We've just done another section of that, and we see a couple more opportunities. So we're trying to make minimal cost investments to improve the spaces themselves, because as an example, on a corner with that partition there, you had kind of a stall and a half. Take that partition out, you've got a great corner stall which just opens up to the traffic, etc. So I would say we've turned the corner, Councillor Collins, but we still certainly have a long way to go. Events like the celebration of Sam's Meat and Cheese and the crowd that it drew, the publicity, etc., really helps with the momentum. But it's like you're as good as your last sale kind of thing, right?
I just want to take this opportunity to say that you've done a tremendous job, Donna Lee and others, in terms of trying to turn things around. And I know that the ward councillor, as well as staff in many respects, inherited a mess from your predecessor, Mr. Chairman, in terms of these unresolved issues. It's hard to understand that, you know, we're sitting and talking about these things when we've made such an investment in that facility to try to assist the stallholders and by extension make the downtown a better place. And despite those challenges, you're making good progress, the team that's working on this, and I know that Councillor Farr has put a lot of time and energy into it as well. So I want to commend all of you who've, again, taken on an issue that had all kinds of problems associated with it after the renovation, very little political oversight at the time, and you've done tremendous work in light of those hoops and hurdles that you've had to overcome. So I just want to thank everyone involved. We're not there yet, as you have just mentioned, but we're making good progress.
Thank you very much, Councillor. If I may just add, our goal at this point is to be able to hand the keys over to the not-for-profit corporation with a pretty smooth running operation. Because I don't think it would be an easy thing for a community board to then try to tackle some, you know, capital issues, etc. So we'd really like to have those things addressed and then be able to lift it to the next level with their expertise, a little bit more autonomy from us here at City Hall, and on they go with a great community involvement. So that's our target. And if we've essentially, after, if approval is received today on these adjustments, and then goes through council, then Eleonora and Legal Services will be able to just finish up the letters patent, bylaws, and then our work at this point in time is pretty much done from the governance point of view. We'll be staying really focused on the operational point of view until we get to a new selection committee and call out to the public for citizen members. And as the subcommittee guided us in our last meeting, we've shared with the stallholder community that the selection of their representation will be based on 100% opportunity for all the vendors as opposed to the stallholders association only. If they happen to be the same number, that's fine, but we don't want it to be omitting anybody from the opportunity to select their representation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Pursuta, I'll pass the chair to you. And undoubtedly from this presentation and presentations before, the downtown Hamilton Farmers Market has been taken off life support. There's some walking around now, and every indication that right around the corner, vitality and consistency is going to be very much the story of the day, and it's all due to the hard work of people like Donnelly and yourself, John, and Eleanor, and all those vendors and stallholders and committed shoppers who are well engaged, and I'm quite pleased. Through you, Chair, just a few questions. Could you go to the community partnership page, the community profiles photo you showed on the side of that page? I couldn't. They weren't numbered, but
Do you see at the very top the numbering? It's in the. Is it in the Word document?
John, it's the one
it
with
was
the
on your
Easter
presentation.
photo.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I know the one you're referring to. My apologies. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's okay.
This one?
Yeah, I was just going off your presentation. I hadn't opened it. Yeah, it says page. No, it doesn't say.
Yeah, on that one it doesn't. No, you're right. This is the one you're referring to?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one. So, great work, the Spectator. You know, people read that stuff. It's a little wordy, but we've got a big story to tell. But, and I'm no marketer, but I know that from past Farmers Market Subcommittee meetings and hearing from the stallholders, their number one issue was getting that free parking back. It's validated parking, but still, it's that hour of validated parking. And I don't see anywhere in that community profile Spectator ad it jumping out at me. And I would suspect, and in consideration of their number one issue, and that it's been rectified and it's going to continue should it be received well here today and then council approved, why wouldn't we, whenever we have that opportunity, just flash that message out as prominent as anything?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, this piece is, through you, Chair, is very unique in terms of its content. Literally on every single tweet, Facebook,
Yeah.
you know, we're really promoting hard on the validated parking. But it's a point well taken that on any editorials like this that we get, we'll make sure that we're emphasizing the validated parking as well.
And through you, Chair, to John, the cost, to my recollection, for this 6-month pilot, it was estimated by Marty Hazel at $15K for 6 months. And if I'm not mistaken, just in a sidebar conversation with you not long ago, we actually came in right around that estimate for the first 6 months of validated parking through you.
Yes, through you, Chair. It was actually the 4 months, so from March 1st to the end of June.
4.
It looks like we will come in, you know, right at that. Might be a couple of nickels left over, but it was a good estimate. And the reason we're suggesting 40 is probably required for the balance of the year is that we are gaining momentum. So we're trying to provision for those, we hope, optimistic days where we get to, you know, 500 or 600 validations on a Saturday.
Who manages, through the chair, the winery? Is that going to be managed by, like, if you're saying there's this rotation of all these great Niagara wineries, and hopefully Peely gets in there now and again too, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Who's going to be operating it if there's different vendors on a rotational basis?
Through the chair, we kind of look at this as we would any other vendor arrangement. So one of the things we haven't given up on that we're still working on is try to get a collection, for example, of farmers who might want to share a space, almost like a cooperative within the market. Similarly, we would look at this, and again, it depends, quite honestly, a lot on the business case that they come back to us with in terms of what would make sense to them. We would manage it through Donnelly and team, and then I'm assuming that the contact you had this morning, Donnelly, maybe you can add to it, would offer some coordination, single point of contact for us to be setting up the scheduling.
So through the chair, so the Alcohol and Gaming Commission allows wineries to sell 3 days a week in a market.
Right.
And so what we'll do is we'll set up a contractual agreement with maybe 3 to 6 wineries and then have them in on a rotational basis in an area that we're going to have designated as for wine sales. We'll be managing it, we'll be having contracts with them, we'll be collecting their fees, and we'll be working with the Ontario Wine Association that I met with this morning, or council, to help us make those relationships with the wineries and also to do outreach to the industry in general. But in terms, so we'll be managing it in-house.
Okay, so I thought I heard it would be premium rent and then an additional fee then, if a management fee, I would assume, in addition to the premium rent for something, an operation like that? Can I assume that through you, Chair?
If I may respond, only we haven't thought of a management fee on top. The way we operate today, for example, through the chair, is that we have 2 per square foot rent levels. This could potentially be a 3rd level, but it would be an all-in kind of thing, as
Okay.
opposed to a separate management fee.
Fair enough. It's just that we don't manage other stalls, and if we're going to manage this stall, we should probably try to recoup some of that cost and throw it at validated parking or whatever.
Exactly.
I mean, go forward and continue to do the great work, but just something to think about. Just finally on the market layout slide, on
Yes.
your action slide. And I got to tell you, it's very refreshing to be on a subcommittee where we talk about doing stuff and then you come back at the next meeting and you check off all the things that you've done, instead of just saying, here's the outstanding business list again. And I really like when we get those one-shot slides that show what we've accomplished. So that was the one with the arrows. Action register update, point number 5, master planning of the market layout exercise planned over the summer with association representative and staff. Can you please, to the chair, reassure me or Donna or both that it's just not another exercise where we're telling this vendor to move here and that vendor to move there, because it upsets the apple cart, to use a farmer's market expression.
Right. Through the chair, we have all agreed on a very, very clear principle that we will honor and respect our current vendor community first and foremost. So any recent changes that we've made over the last, I'll say 3 months roughly, has been by offering up to them first any spaces that were available. So if, a person or vendor A wanted to move to that vacant space, we took in the information, and if there was a few people, we sorted through why, et cetera, and then we moved. So we've done everything, including expanding existing stalls a little bit to go kind of pillar to pillar, making their business as successful as possible to respect and honor the fact that they've been contributing to the market's success for many, many years. Our thought, I don't like 5 years, because 5 years is so far away in any world these days, but let's say it's a 5-year plan. Maybe it's 3. We hope to come up with something that is we'll start with a kind of a blank floor plan, and we'll start based on concepts, plotting without names necessarily. We'll plot first, what do we want the market mix to look like? Flower stall holders, butchers, produce, etc. We'll come up with a few different ideas and options. And that will be ultimately when we would finish that work, which will take a lot of external input as well. We'll say, okay, that's kind of the master plan. And it might take us a while to get there. And the way that we would get there is when there's a vacancy created. So somebody might choose to retire, somebody decides to relocate their business to another city, whatever that might be. We'll say, okay, well, on our master plan, we said that we wanted, I'll make this up, an extra florist or flower grower. So is this the time then that we should make that move, or are there some other domino things that we would look at first within the existing vendor community? So we will not, as I said earlier, we will not look at this as a way of just, reshuffling the deck and throwing it all up in the air. It'll be a very, I'll say, respectful movement towards a master plan.
Okay. Finally, through the chair to Eleonora, who worked so hard on the original bylaws for the governance and obviously has a whole new scheme toward the new governance model. Can you just speak to, from a legal perspective, is there anything that's you're flagging, or is this process for you looking to be a smooth one? How it may, very generally and briefly, how it may differ, obviously, from the previous bylaw that you worked on? Just a general comment from legal through you, Chair.
So far, so good. Everything is going smoothly from a legal point of view. And what will happen when the new board is appointed, we'll negotiate an operating agreement, which will set out our expectations of the corporation, and it'll also set out what the city will provide as well. in the arrangement, and we'll have to repeal the market bylaw because we're handing it over to another entity. So having a market bylaw exist doesn't really work with that model. And what will govern the market is, and what will govern the board of directors is the letters patent, which are the articles of incorporation, and the corporate bylaws, which is different from the market bylaw, and the operating agreement. And that'll be the new structure.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. I'll take the chair back. Any secondary questions from committee? Move to receive John Hertel's presentation then, please. Moved by Councillor Pursuta and seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor? That's carried. John, thank you. Great presentation today and good work from staff. So now to a motion to approve item 5.1. This is the governance model report, and remove the corresponding item from the outstanding business list. That is moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Pursuta. All in favor? That is unanimously carried. On item 5.2, a motion to approve 5.2 respecting the market pilot parking project, and noting staff will report back in December of 2014. Moved by Collins, seconded by Pursuta. All in favor? That's carried. A motion to remove item C now from the outstanding business list. This respects the market banner. Moved by Pursuta, seconded by Collins. All in favor? Any general information? Seeing none. No private and confidential matters, I don't believe, Madam Clerk. So a motion to adjourn. Moved by Collins, seconded by Pursuta. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Don't
thank
forget to